Jay here for Stretford, Paddock, and this is the Tier 1 Transfer Podcast. Joining me, as always, is my co-host, Ronaldo Brown. Ronaldo, how are we doing?
I'm doing good, innit? I've been a bit unwell, though.
Have you not got the old... I mean,
I got all the old...
to worry here about
got the old
negative
test.
You've had the test and you're alright, you're negative, which is all good to hear.
Other than that, I've been, obviously, I know you don't like it. But Paddock FC is proper ruined me. Do you know what I'm saying? So,
I mean, we got what is that? 12 seconds into the show, and you already started about Paddock FC. This is the Paddock FC podcast. I don't even know that.
It's double jeopardy, innit? Basically.
Wait, you won it. You had a win and a red card as well, so a bit bittersweet.
A bittersweet. Obviously, if I'm gonna get my legs taken away from under me every time.
It's a ridiculous challenge, though, to be
fair. But it's all right.
But
I'm here talking about the news, innit?
Paddock FC have won. Ronaldo's not got the Rona, but more importantly, Manchester United have actually made a signing as well. So we're going to get on to, obviously, all the Tier 1 transfer news. Just going backwards a little bit to the signing of Donny van de Beek, which is amazing because last time we were on this podcast together, it wasn't even really a rumour. It was someone we'd been linked with as in we're looking at him, but there was no, it looks like we're going to sign him, negotiations underway, none of that. And then on Sunday morning, we went from a rumour to, by the evening, Fabrizio Romano gave us those three magic words, here we go.
Here you go.
What did you make of that? Because it got momentum, and then, as always, looking at the reliable sources, and once I saw Romano tweet that, I knew that was it. It was on, and he tweeted on Sunday. He said, "Here we go. Man United tonight expected have sent their official bid, and Ajax have just accepted without any negotiation. Agreement reached. No negotiation. Literally, what do you want? Yeah, there you are. Like the opposite of Jadon Sancho. 40 million plus add-ons, paperwork and medicals next week. That's obviously been done this week, and he signed. Hashtag MUFC. So Romano announced it. Other places announced it as well. What have you made of the fact we've got him and how quickly we did it?
When have you ever seen United do, like in recent times, do a deal that fast with absolutely no negotiation? You're looking at it as a positive. You're like, we've got a man in that we've needed, like a midfield. He offers a bit of depth. It's going to be, obviously we don't know yet how he's going to kind of fit in with the Bruno and Pogba kind of axis or whatever we've got going on in the midfield. But you do look at it a bit like, why have they not made it even a little bit more difficult?
Do you think that there was talk, there's again from reputable sources, that Edwin van der Sar got involved from the Ajax side of thing?
Got inside men, basically.
Yeah, and Ollie made a call to Van der Beek, so Ollie's had a word with him. The player's happy. Van der Sar's negotiated between the two clubs somewhat, made that deal sort of run smoothly. Do you think that might have had something to do with the fact you've got Ollie and you've got Van der Sar getting involved in this transfer, hands-on, and making it happen?
Yeah, I guess that's how it works, and it's not what you know, it's who. Always seems to be the way, but it's still. I'm just in awe.
You look like you're a little bit stunned by it.
Nah, I was because it came out of the blue. I know the Donny van de Beek rumours or rumblings were kind of just a bit underground, a little bit. People just said, "What about? Why don't we go for him?" Because you heard about his low release clause, etc. But
well, we've spoken to a lot of journalists, haven't we, on this podcast, and the sort of. The only thing they've said about Van der Beek is he was on a list. They were looking at him. United were looking at him. There was no one was saying, he's going to be the next signing. I mean, all eyes were pretty much on the Jadon Sancho transfer. So it was good. You know a little bit more about him than I do. You mentioned there how do you see it being now a midfield three of Van der Beek, Pogba, and Bruno, or do you think it's going to rotate with two of those three, with someone like Nemanja Matic maybe behind him?
I did a little bit of research on him a few days ago, and it did say he played about 6 or 7 games in the DM position for Ajax, but when I've watched him, he does seem a bit more like the progressive midfielder, kind of the Lampard, or even like Bruno, where he's more, he'll arrive into the box as a final third kind of midfielder, so I'm not sure how it's going to kind of work with 3 of them. I think he could go with 3 of them against a team that you definitely know is lesser, or they're going to give you kind of a low block and probably less problems to deal with going forward from them. Then you've got a midfield of Donny van de Beek, Bruno and Pogba to kind of break that down. I think that could work. Obviously, we've seen how City kind of got their De Bruyne and David Silva in the same midfield, and Gundogan. And that's not exactly got much defensive aspects to it. So it can work if we just get on the ball enough, if we get on the ball and we get against the right opposition. Then it can work out. But it's obviously not great on Pereira and Lingard and stuff. That's what you've got to look at.
Yeah, it is. I don't like sort of making it all about them because we always criticise them, but they haven't had great spells, and you could argue that neither of them at the moment are likely to feature much for Manchester United ever again. one thing, I mean, it is weird because you mentioned that maybe he's going to play all three. One of my bugbears last season was having two older midfielders against lower teams, lesser teams.
Okay.
You know, we're going into games against the likes of Bournemouth, Watford, Newcastle, West Ham, Palace, with almost two holding midfielders and losing those games. And for me, like what you just said, we should be getting at teams. Now he's gone the other way and almost had no holding potentially no holding midfielders. I was thinking maybe one, which is what we did towards the end of the season with Nemanja Matic. But sort of having those three midfielders, do you think though that there's a danger that they might be a little bit too similar there? You said he's a little bit like Bruno. Do you think there's a danger that you're going to have sort of players getting in each other's way almost, or wanting to do the same thing and not having that player that you need who is just going to sit deep? Because as you mentioned, Van der Beek can be a DM, but that's probably not his best position.
I don't. It is a difficult one. I don't see there being enough balance in that three for the most part. But as we've just mentioned, when we're against the likes of Palace and Brighton's, the teams that are quite low down the table that are going to come out and kind of show up, stop, and basically be a little bit defensive, low block. We had problems breaking them down early in the season because of what you just mentioned. We were kind of coming in there with the likes of McTominay that are a little bit not as forward thinking or creative. And if you brave enough, as United should be, then we could go with that three. But against week in, week out, against tough opposition that are going to give you problems going the other way, it might be a little bit imbalanced looking at it on face value. But we could see. Depends how he adjusts. He might be able to adjust to the end position. We don't know. Just got to wait in next season and see how he performs really and see how it kind of looks like.
I mean, if he does go the other way and he says, okay, I'm only going to pick two of those three, we know that we saw it at the end of last season, especially going into the Sevilla game in the Europa League semi-final, where Bruno, even Pogba looked a little bit leggy, looked like needed rest. It would be great, wouldn't it, to have a real option because, some of the other midfielders you mentioned, you take Bruno out and you replace him with Pereira, it's not even remotely similar. But if you took Bruno out and replaced him with Van der Beek, you could argue that Bruno's better, but there's still quality there, isn't there? So it's good to see we've got options if you needed to rest someone.
Yeah, it's more options and more depth because we were complaining, like, in the end of the season, the kind of running. We had like a solidified 11 that was looking like one of the best teams in Europe at the time, going off form on momentum anyway. But it was the fact that we couldn't afford to rotate.
No.
And it seemed like if you took one of them out or one person out in a position, it made a big difference to how the team performed.
I mean, I know he made a few changes, but the FA Cup semi-final sticks in my mind because that's a trophy that was dying for us to win. I thought it was fantastic to get top four in the FA Cup would have been amazing. But he brought in a Gallo and a couple of us, and he made a couple of changes, and the team suffered for it massively. And it's like you say, that 11 was solid, but once you start swapping. If you take a Pogba out and you replace him with a Fred, or you take a Martial out and you replace him with a Gallo, it does suffer, even though we like those players. It does suffer. So now, hopefully... kind
of scatter it, innit?
Yeah, we can scatter it as well. Staying on United for a minute, players going the other way. At the time of recording this, I mean, by the time you're watching it, it may well be a done deal, it may well be here we go. But it looks like Smalling could be going to Roma. Obviously, Chris Smalling went out to Roma last season on loan, had a very, very good campaign with them.
Yeah.
And they apparently came in with a bid a few weeks ago, I think, and it wasn't enough. Or they had negotiations, United were saying, no, we want more money. I think United wanted around the £20 million mark. Roma were looking at sort of closer to 10-15 million. Again, Romano, who knows his stuff, he was tweeting a couple of days ago, I think it was, the agreement between AS Roma and Manchester United for Chris Smalling is now getting closer. Smalling wants to come back, so obviously go back to Rome where he had that season last season. Looks like it is going to happen. Is that the right move for everyone?
I don't know, we said that we were trying to get rid of Deadwood, and I think he's kind of on the bordering line of would you keep him for a little bit of depth? Because it's not like we have a complete solidified centre in partnership. We haven't got a Vidic and Ferdinand kind of scenario going on. It's not movable. We're not quite sure on Lindelof. I know a few people are against him, Adam being one. But if you do get rid of him, then you've got to be sure that you are going to probably bring in another option because it depends on what. We don't know what's going to happen with Axel. We can't seem to stay fit. Eric Bailly can't stay fit either. And he's a bit of a walking mistake sometimes, even though he can be unplayable on his day. So if you do get rid of Smalling, he's a good defender, but I said he was technically inept. I said that on a video and got a bit of stick for it. I remember someone saying, he's not technically inept, he scored a volley once or something like that for United. I'm thinking, yeah. No, but I don't think he kind of fits into where United are trying to go now. So if he does leave, it's a good move, but I would like to see it happen with United having the mindset of looking ahead for a possible option to bring in as well.
I quite like Chris Smalling. I think he gets a little bit of unfair stick. I think he's had a very good overall United career. You know, he helped us win a title, of course, when he first arrived, and he's won all the trophies with us. He's not faultless, not flawless. We know that. I think sometimes he gets tired with that whole Phil Jones brush as well. They sort of get tangled in together. I think that can be a little bit harsh. And, you know, he's been a good servant. I think it is right for him to move on. I think a move to Roma. Because if Chris Smalling was talking about to Arsenal a few years ago, and I didn't want him to go there because I thought he might do a job for them. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? He's not a disaster. On his day, as you mentioned, he's a very good defender. And I wouldn't want to see him go to a team and in and around us and strengthen them. So I'm glad he's going to Roma. And I think if it does come back to Old Trafford, I think he'll get a good reception from the fans. I think when fans look back at what he did for the club and the amount of games he played and some of the trophies he won, I think he'll be all right. And I think that's a move that makes a lot of sense. Another move that could be on the cards this time coming in though, this was sort of bubbling up a little bit over the last couple of weeks. We spoke to, I don't think it was on this podcast, I think it was on a different one. We spoke to Florian Plettenberg from Sport 1, who covers Bayern Munich, and he'd spoken about Thiago Alcantara and how he'd be open to move to Old Trafford, even though he's heavily linked with Liverpool. He said that he thinks he'd be up for coming to United, and maybe Liverpool wasn't his preferred choice. It looked like though the Scousers were going to get him, but that's been rumbling on a bit because apparently there's it's not all said and done. And the latest was that sort of Liverpool were working to get him, but Bayern Munich were waiting for a bid that they were happy with for him, because I think it's 30 million his buyout clause, which is amazing that Liverpool haven't got that, because it seems like the money the revenue they must have been getting from like winning the title, going far in Europe, winning the Champions League, and then the Champions League campaigns they've had and the revenue from all that. I know we're in the middle of the pandemic, but still, you'd think that 30 million euros for a club that's just won the title, you want to strengthen when you're strong.
By the looks of it,
it's just really weird that.
I know, by the looks of it, it looks like the Scousers are broke. From what I can see,
I'm going to resist the joke there. I'm not saying anything.
From what I can tell, so I'm not going to rob nothing.
Well, no, you're right. I don't understand it because I know he's 29, so he's not one who's going to be there for. But 30 million for a 29-year-old player who's just won the Champions League, won 8 Bundesligas or whatever on the spin. Obviously, very talented. I think the only sticking point, and this is what Florian was saying to us a few weeks ago, or last week, was that Liverpool do have an abundance of midfielders, even though we have as well at United. But he felt that with the likes of Naby Keita, with Fabinho, he might look at it and go, am I going to get into this team? Which, I don't know. It sounds
still their weakest area, though.
I know, I always think, I'd put our midfield over Liverpool's any day of the week.
I'm not sure if 30 mil, if they're getting offered 30 mil for Thiago, I think
that's his clause as well.
And then not taking it as a United fan or any rival fan, happy days, because I wouldn't want to see Thiago playing for Liverpool.
No, I wouldn't.
Because he's top quality, and
he is top quality, and obviously he got like I said earlier, he picked up a Champions League winners medal and was a big part of their success there. Just won the treble. Another story that was sort of doing the rounds and has been sort of blown out of the water was Upamecano, the Leipzig defender, coming to United. This rumour or story or whatever you want to call it, report, was doing the rounds for the last couple of weeks. But Christian Falk, who's very reliable, another tier 1 journalist, he simply tweeted, rumours about a transfer of Upamecano to Man United this summer are, and this is where he hit the caps lock button, not true. So that looks done, doesn't it?
Quite definitive, that, isn't
it? Yeah, like when you start capitalising things, then you pretty much putting your neck out there. Obviously, with any transfer, things can change, but that doesn't look likely to me.
No, it doesn't look likely now. And if you're pretty much the tier of journalist or what these, and you're putting in definitive statements like that, it's not even like speculation or anything.
Usually, like they're covering it back a little bit, won't they? Like even the likes of like Romano or Winter or whoever will say like talks are ongoing or things can change, but he's like not true.
He's almost said it as if Upamecano said it himself to him.
Yeah.
That's what he basically like.
You never know. Because he thought he's got so many connections. Maybe he spoke to his agent or he spoke to the player, well, someone around the club or whatever. But that doesn't look like it's happening. Go on.
Because if you think about it, if he said that and it does end up happening, that's just getting cold tweeted, and then thought gets the downgrade.
You can delete it, matter. We'll screenshot that. We'll say, Christian, come on, mate. You call yourself tier 1. Not true. Capitalised. Get a grip. Are you disappointed about that? Is he someone you wanted to see at Old Trafford, or are you not bothered?
No, I think when I last watched him in the Champions League, I think he got a man of the match in performance actually, and he was very, very strong. He was pretty much the exact kind of centre back we'd be looking for to kind of partner Maguire in terms of the athleticism aspect and the strength and like the command that he's got at the young age. But if it's not true, then I don't know, what can we do? We can just kind of wait and see. But
you could go through next season, couldn't you?
We could do.
He's only a youngster.
But I think it's a bidding war then, that's what they're suggesting. Yeah. But Romano did say though a couple of days ago, he said that it's a possibility they could, well, he didn't say Upamecano, but he said United are looking ahead in terms of they're only going to give Smalling away in terms of selling him if they have a replacement in mind. So it just depends on who, really.
I just wonder, like you mentioned Axel, you mentioned Eric Bailly, I wonder whether he's thinking of giving them a chance.
Yeah, probably.
Saying like, I'll give you a season to prove, or even Lindelof. Saying to Lindelof,
yeah.
I know you're my first choice, but
yeah.
you've not had the best season. Can you show them what you're made of? A different story altogether now, different track, but staying on Manchester United and on Tier 1 journalists and what they're saying. Marcus Rashford. Henry Winter was quoting Marcus Rashford's tweet saying, Marcus Rashford obviously is doing his end child poverty campaign, and Rashford had said, growing up, Henry Winter said, growing up, Marcus Rashford and his siblings relied on breakfast clubs, free school meals, food banks, soup kitchens, and the kind of actions of neighbours and coaches. It is why this conscientious 22-year-old is fighting hard for 4.2 million vulnerable children. #end child food poverty. Rashford he's not settling, is he, from making that the free school meals thing his only campaign. He's carrying it on and he's trying to end child poverty. Obviously, it's nothing to do with transfers. Just mention it because it was sort of doing the rounds, and I was tweeting about Henry Winter, who we've had.
He's a legend.
And I just thought worth briefly mentioning. Great to see what Marcus is doing.
Is Marcus for president still ongoing?
Marcus, mate, I'd vote for him. So, going backwards slightly, because we're moving on now to sort of non-United related news, but this does cover United a little bit. Mohamed Bouhafsi, he was talking about Thiago, and he was saying his only choice is Liverpool. Klopp and Alcantara have already discussed. Alcantara has already prepared his arrival in England. Bayern know it, and discussions with Liverpool are long. And he quote tweeted someone called Francesco Porzio, and he says, Hansi Flick about Thiago's future, and this is in quotation marks, I assume that he will leave us. I think his decision has been made. So they're preparing, aren't they, for him to go, and they're saying that it is the Scousers. And as you said already, you don't really want to see.
So it seems like Liverpool are the only ones in the running for him.
Yeah.
And so that means I don't know whether his agents or his representatives are doing that thing where kind of posturing for a better deal, because it's like they threw out the United interest, and we don't know how definitive the United interest actually is.
Everyone does that, don't they?
Yeah.
Do you remember like Gabriel Magalhaes?
Yeah.
When it was like, I know there was talk one that the United had approached the agent, but as soon as he's got to Arsenal, talks have stagnated. United are in for him.
There we go.
Do you know what I mean?
No, our names definitely just gets pulled out.
I mean, there's sometimes you wonder how sort of realistic that connection is. I mean, you just did a tweet there about David Brooks. We spoke to Peter Rutzler a few weeks ago, who covers Bournemouth for The Athletic, because the Brooks to United rumours came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And he said...
Didn't it happen?
Yeah, he said... And Laurie Whitwell, I spoke to him, and he said something similar from The Athletic. He said... he might be on a list, but United have a long list of players that they're monitoring, or players that potentially, they could look at. But that doesn't mean that he's coming to Old Trafford. It just means that he's someone they're keeping an eye on. And sometimes that gets exaggerated, doesn't it? So he's coming to United, and contacts been made, and talks are underway, and you think, well, are they? And this is why one of the reasons we like to do this podcast and look at what the more reliable people are saying. Yeah. On your mate Romano, he was saying about Koulibaly. We asked him about that, didn't we?
We did.
He quoted the Napoli president, De Laurentiis, and said that Koulibaly can leave the club. Yes, if some club make an important bid, we will let him go. On this summer, Same for Kudus
Milik, yeah.
Thank you, got me out of jail there with the pronunciation. Talking about the City and Koulibaly rumours. Now, when we spoke to, I think Romano,
I think he just brought it up. I don't think we even asked. I think he just brought up the Koulibaly.
He said he said the relationship's not great, is it, between Napoli and City? Because City were going to get Jorginho. It was a done deal.
Yeah.
And then Chelsea said, well, we'll have Jorginho and we'll take Sarri off your hands as manager. So Napoli were like, right, okay, yeah, that's
ship
great.
them off.
Getting both, big deal there.
So City felt offended.
Yeah, slighted. So they've the relationship between those two clubs isn't great.
He also said, Romano, that the German teams are just really difficult to negotiate with. I think that's what you might be coming across with the Bayern and Thiago thing before. So we might actually eventually see, because we not spoke about obviously the Havertz.
The time recording, it's like Havertz is a done deal to Chelsea.
Just happening.
Yeah.
How long has that taken? I felt like we've spoke about that.
And they've gone in with a big offer there, haven't they, Chelsea? Because like you said, that's dragged on a little bit.
That's dragged on for like 2 weeks.
It's been a big offer. It's not been pennies that. But I think, do you know what?
Yeah.
We can criticise and question all that, but I think the German club's got every right to say, these are top quality players. You've got the money, and most of these clubs, Liverpool have got money for Thiago. United have got money for Sancho. We know that.
Yeah.
Chelsea have got money for Havertz. So there's no reason for these clubs to go, okay, then you can have him. Go on then.
Go on then.
No, and they're digging their heels in, and I'm not going to moan about that, because I think if you want the talent, you have to pay for it. And if you go in for players like Jadon Sancho, like Kai Havertz, or like anyone really, anyone from that, like Thiago Alcantara, then you should be prepared to pay the money. So it's no good sort of being surprised or trying to haggle with teams that don't often need to sell, because a lot of these clubs are very well run. So a lot of them don't necessarily rely on the transfers. Some of them do, not all of them do. Where the well run, and the way it works in Germany as well, they're sort of partly owned by the fans and stuff like that. So it's like there's a real vested interest in seeing the team do well.
It's a definitive statement. Yeah, it is quite a stern statement though from the president of the actual club, saying that Koulibaly can leave.
If the president getting involved in it, and just I'll tell you, you can go.
You can go if I get the right money.
With Napoli. I mean, what is he, 29 now?
29, yeah.
This is it, innit? In terms of
big money.
Because once he's hitting that 30, he's 29 till he's 30. He's sort of thing.
It's like
it's
chalk and cheese.
It changes, doesn't it? It's that £90 million valuation suddenly can be halved or whatever. Just to round up, another Tier 1 journalist, Gerard Romero, who is Mr. Barcelona at the time recording, he just quote tweeted, Messi's father confirms, and again he's hitting caps lock here, for the first time in capitals, that Leo Messi is studying the option of staying one more year at Barca. Now, unless you've had your head buried in the sand somewhere, Messi to Manchester City, which is a sentence I never thought I'd say out loud, looks like it could be happening. And that's the sort of the latest stories and rumour over the last week or so. Regardless of how much it's going to cost, I think City would be willing to pay it, especially since they got away with the FFP. Sorry, they were cleared of the FFP allegations or whatever. But now it looks like there's a twist that maybe he's staying at Barcelona. Where do you stand on this? Obviously, we don't want to see City getting Lionel Messi, or is there a party that says if they're going to spend ridiculous amounts of money on a 33-year-old, even if it is Lionel Messi, I can live with it?
I wouldn't mind seeing Lionel Messi in the Premier League, but seeing him for City, it's a bit difficult to take, because obviously he's borderline the GOAT, isn't he? I think if he goes to City, regardless of whatever, I will never ever think he's a GOAT. He's always going to be. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be more difficult to say, because I've been a.
Are you Messi?
I've been a Messi guy my career, but I'm also a Ronaldo guy. I'm actually one of the same people that is able to appreciate both. So,
I'm very bitter, man. I'll never forgive Messi for missing that penalty against Chelsea in the Champions League. I hold on to things like that. No, he is one of the best players.
I think if you're a football fan, as a football purist, you'd want to see how he does in the Premier League.
I mean, I've seen him a few times, obviously played against United, I've seen him in the flesh, and, unfortunately, he's cost us 2 Champions Leagues, hasn't it?
Like, it was at the one where he walked around schools on the right wing.
Well, there was one in 2009, 2011, the 2 finals. He also helped knock us out. Was it last season or season before?
Yeah.
But it would be great to see him in the Premier League. I don't really want to see him for Manchester City. It looks as though, it's 50-50 now, isn't it, really? You could go.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous money involved, though. It's
like 700 million.
700 million for one man.
I mean, it made me laugh when people were thinking, United could be linked with him, and I'm thinking, really? We're £700 million in debt. We need to fucking sort out before we start buying 33-year-olds.
I was thinking as a professional footballer, if the sign-on fee still existed, like the 10% that usually happens, that players get when, for example, if you buy a player for 50 million, there was a sign-on fee kind of thing where the player would get 10% of that as like a direct debit.
So you think it'd be 700 million, 70 million straight in Messi's pocket?
3 days, yes.
Well, that's not bad, is it?
Not
a
bad.
Piece of paper.
But I don't.
But there was talk, wasn't there, if he goes to City, that he'll go to City for 2 years, then he'll go to New York City because that's part of their organisation for a further 3 years or something on, again, massive money, and then he'll become an ambassador for the organisation where he'll earn. I mean, it could be worth potentially something ridiculous like £500 million to him.
Currently owns Barca now, doesn't he? Messi.
Maybe. So it'd be interesting to see how this one pans out, because you've always thought of him as a one-man club, haven't you?
Yeah, it's one. And is it not interesting in a way? The league literally spoke out on the Messi thing. The Liga went. I saw something.
Sergio Ramos before was doing a press conference where he was saying he wants him to stay. That's Real Madrid. That's like. What I'm saying. Do you know what I mean? That's like Ollie doing a press conference saying, "Oh, you know, I want to see Mo Salah stay at the Scousers."
That's what I'm saying. I saw La Liga literally put Messi cannot leave for free.
That's like, mate.
And I'm like, the league comes out. When has the Premier League ever come out with a statement on a player and a transfer?
That's why you've got these City fans who are tweeting like there's some sort of experts on the Spanish legal system.
Yeah.
Well, I've read. Actually, it's like, mate, you know nothing.
In my Catalan
thing,
dictionary.
I've just Googled and hit Google Translate. It says that he's going to stay. We'll have to wait and see what happens with that one, but more to the point, never mind what City are doing, whether they're buying Messi or whatever. Manchester United have bought Donny van der Beek. Hopefully some more transfers to come, and if they are, we will be keeping you posted on Stretford, Paddock, and obviously on this podcast as well. Bit of a different one today, just me and Ronaldo. Sometimes, most of the time we have a guest, but we have got some guests lined up for you over the next few weeks. So we'll be speaking to some of the top tier 1 journalists about the latest transfers. So don't forget to check that out. Also, great content coming up on the channel as well. We'll have more podcasts. We'll have Joe's Late Night Live tomorrow night as well, so make sure you check that out. I've been Jay, that's been Ronaldo. This has been the Stretford Paddock Tier 1 Transfer Podcast. Don't forget to hit subscribe. Thanks for watching.